I've never met somebody who's overspending on creative. I've met too many people underspending on creative. So that's like the biggest thing for me.
My guest today is Matthew Gattozzi, founder of Goodo Studios. Matthew spent over a decade as a professional ballet dancer. A back injury ended that at 22. So he took the discipline of ballet and built a creative studio with it. In this episode, the P&L test that exposes what you actually prioritize as a brand. The simple math for how many new ads you actually need every single month. Almost everyone gets this number wrong. And why diversity beats volume in your ad account every single time. If you run ads, this one will sting a little in a good way. Let's get into it. Matthew, welcome to the Ecom Growth Insider.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to chat today.
Me too. I want to start somewhere where most marketing podcasts don't start. Ballet.
Yes.
You trained as a professional dancer for over a decade. Give people the short version of how that ended and how like advertising and creative began.
Yeah. So obviously the lore of my background is that I was a professional ballet dancer. I started when I was young, 9 years old, was training all up through high school, eventually moved away from Boston where I grew up, moved to Seattle, started dancing here, and then moved eventually to Austin and danced there professionally. And I stopped dancing really young in my career, 21, 22, because of a back injury. So that was really hard. But obviously, like I'm a very artistic person, I'm very creative. And so, outside of me dancing, I was making vlogs and, this is during Casey Neistat's era. And I was really inspired by his work. I loved photography. I'd done photography in high school. So I had a passion for visuals. And around this time, when I stopped dancing, this is around 2018, I realized that I could make money from my camera. That was the goal. Because food trucks, restaurants, they also needed Instagram content, not just Nike and the big brands. So that was really kind of the thesis was let's just make some money, let's pay my rent. And living in Austin at that time, before Austin really popped off, I kind of got to see the rise of that city. And I was able to do events and was really able to do a lot of the, shooting of just local businesses, which was really great. But then I realized that, that the people that were hiring me were actually marketing managers, right? And I need to really speak their language. I loved business. I loved learning about advertising and copywriting. But I realized that my camera friends weren't thinking about advertising and my advertising friends weren't talking about production. And those two things needed to be combined. And so it was in that crossover that I realized that I could really combine two different passions of understanding people and psychology while also using, my camera and being able to do my passion creatively. And that's really kind of how we transitioned. It was at one point, like, just got to pay my rent to, hey, I really want to make the biggest and best commercials in advertising. And I think I can do that through understanding people and production and putting those two things together. And that is really kind of what started Goodo Studios, which then was me going away from just being a freelancer to let's build a team, let's build a studio around this. And that was about 4 years ago. So, it's been a journey and really excited to be chatting about it.
Nice. Really, really exciting journey. I imagine the injury at 21, 22 was tough. I can't imagine how that was because I had around the same age, I had to get like shoulder surgery.
Mhm.
And I just love working out, love going to the gym. Never did it professionally, not even close. But then had like shoulder injury, a lot of problems with it, had to get surgery. And even that was tough because I wasn't able to like work out for a few months. It was like a lot of like I had pain for I think 2 years with that. And I can't imagine how that is if that's basically your whole career, your whole life revolves around that.
Yeah, it was really hard. I think that it was some of my darkest times, just for myself. And I really lost my identity. I think I found myself having my identity around being a ballet dancer, and even people kind of knew me as a ballet dancer, right? Like that was because it was such an interesting, different thing that it made me stand out. Like, you're not like, hey, here's Jim. He's a marketing manager. Like you're not introducing your friends like that, but you're going to introduce me as like, oh, this is Matthew. He's a ballet dancer. Like, isn't that cool? Like, I was the icebreaker. Like, and so whether I liked it or not, I was making that my identity, which was very hard when I lost that, because not only did I lose my dance career, but I was losing my identity and who I was. And so I was in a very dark lost spot. Um and actually yesterday was my 8 years being sober. Which is a kind of a crazy thing from this. So that was May 31st, and because it was kind of my rock bottom, and really from then on out has been me just trying to build my new identity of who I am. And so although I love the work that I do, and I am able to have a great business and work with amazing clients and have a great team, that is not me. 100%. It's part of me, but it's not 100% me. And I think I'm trying to take a different approach of how I approach and see my work. And my worth is not going to come from the work. I've done that before, and I've seen how that's been hurtful. So I'm still very passionate about what I'm doing, of course, but I'm not trying to get my self worth out of what I'm doing. And I think that's been a big shift in terms of how I approach my work, differently than how I approached the first part of my career, which was very much just, I am doing this and getting my worth out of, the success of me as a dancer.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of business owners are struggling with. And I can't say that I haven't been doing that. Like for me, it's also like I've been dedicating a lot of time into building the business, and then it tends to, like, if you are too obsessive about it, too much into the hustle culture, into the bubble, you tend to shift, like make your whole identity the business. And I was talking to a mentor of mine, and he also said that, like, the issue with that is if at some point something happens, the business doesn't go well, something breaks, whatever, you'll be in a very, very dark place. What happened to you with the ballet? Because then you have nothing else.
Yeah. I will say that a lot of times people look at the time spent as like this balance. So, when people talk about like work life balance, I don't like the word balance, because balance is about a state of equilibrium. So it's about evenness. So, people want balance, is what they say. And so that would mean that you would need to evenly sleep, evenly be with friends and family as you are with work and all these different things. And that's just like not the reality. What you really want is harmony, right? Harmony is about how all of these things play together. And there's certain seasons and times where you need to spend more time on work versus other times. And then other times where you can be closer with friends and family, and you're able to have those uh, you know, levers to be pulled at different times. And so I think when we think about just like identity and work, we almost like, sometimes people often think like, well, if you're working a lot, that means that that's where you're getting your identity. It's like you could actually be working a lot, but still not get your identity from that, right? And so for me, when I'm approaching work, I am like, if you look at my calendar, if you look at how much time I'm spending and thinking about work, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot, right? Like, but I'm just not going to make that, I'm not going to make my worth out of it, right? Like, this is something I'm very passionate about. I'm excited about it. I'm learning a lot. I'm go on vacation, but I love reading copywriting books. I'm going to read copywriting books, right? Like, it's what I love, and I know that it's what I love. And so that doesn't mean that I've got to not get my worth out of this. I have to, limit my time. So I think often people are afraid about spending time on something, and I think it's just about how you approach it, right? Like, are you spending a lot of time out of something because you feel like you need to prove to people that you're great and you got to do this? Or are you spending a lot of time because you are getting energy from it and it's fulfilling you. I think that those two things are very different. The time in the calendar looks exactly the same, but your approach to it and your heart behind it is very different. I would argue that most people aren't probably um, honest with that approach and which side do they actually are they actually on, because I think they're focused more on the calendar and the balance part versus the harmony, and your approach to it. So I think that's like for me the biggest difference honestly with that.
I love that approach. That's a really really good take. Um, Here's something that I'm curious about. I think, like, from what I hear, ballet is very brutal. Like, you have tons of like repetitive tasks, um, a lot of like small refinements, things that like a normal viewer would not even notice. Like very very tiny changes, and then obviously a lot of pressure, a lot of stuff going on. How much of that do you think has shifted your view on advertising or what you're doing today? How much does still come from that?
I would say, well, there's kind of two tracks. There's like me, the business owner and entrepreneur, and then there's like me thinking about advertising and quality and creative. So I think it would be foolish to say that it doesn't is not a massive influence of how I see and approach things. So in terms of the business owner entrepreneur side of things, I have been lucky to have done something for over a decade and seen that through, seen the progress, seen what it takes, the sacrifice to do something over a 10-year period and actually get the thing that you wanted at the end, which for me was a professional dance contract. Now, of course, I didn't get to continue on beyond that as much as I would have wanted to, but I saw it, right? Like I got to experience that thing that I had been training for and wanting to do and making that my life. I was able to make that my life for a few years, right? So now, as I approach this next business, I have a long term view and mindset, and I know what it takes to last a long time because I've already done it, right? So, although I'm young, I have already, like, that is the thing that I've gotten my first win, right? Like not my first business win necessarily, but I've seen something through for 10 plus years. And now I can do that same exact thing with Goodo Studios and with my business, right? So I am not looking at, well, where are we in the next year? I'm thinking, yeah, where am I going to be in 10 years from now? And really having that approach and knowing that I can withstand time because I've already done it one time. I can do it again, right? So that just that confidence to approach something from a long term perspective is really really helpful, as well as just having extreme focus. I know that when I first started dancing, I wasn't at the professional level. I knew that it took years and years of getting better and better, work on the same exact thing. So I am very good at working at the same exact thing for 10 plus years. That's true for this, right? So like it'll be advertising every year for 10 plus years. And I know that I will get to a place where I really want to be. Now, how does dance help with how I approach creative is, you have to sweat the details, right? Because whenever like ballet is the most it is the most rigorous in terms of the technique. So most other, dance forms, they come from ballet. They are a progression from ballet. But ballet is the most technique based. There's really like not a lot of error that you can have. Very specific, small details, and you're working on those small details day in and day out for years and years and years. And the same is true when it comes to approaching creative, right? You've got to be able to try multiple times. You got to think about the details. You really have to approach it with a very like deep mindset of like wanting to get better and refine yourself. And oftentimes, when I have kind of a gut reaction to how I train my employees and my team members, it comes from many of the lessons that I've learned and have thought about from dancing, from my teachers who taught me. And I've been able to kind of bring that over to how I teach other people, how I think about things. But if my standard for dancing was perfection, then that's the standard that I want to have with creative. And so when we don't do that, I'm very disappointed, right? And it's important because we need to have a very high standard. So if we're not hitting that high standard, then it's going to kind of crash and burn. The last thing I'll say about that is that in dancing, although you were training yourself like from a singular body, like you were getting better and refining, you were working in productions with many different people. And that created so much coordination. So it was your job to have your job and know your choreography, know the things that you needed to do so that the overall production could work and people trusted you on that. And when you did not prepare, you lost the trust of other people and that hurt the production. Same is true for a team, creative team. There is not just one person making an ad, it's multiple people. And it's our job to make sure that each person is doing their job. They're getting better, they're executing so that the overall ad can execute at the highest level and that the client is growing and is happy with the work that we're producing. So if we're not doing that, it's a problem. And so I really think a lot about our creative team, just like I think about a ballet production is very much the same way. And so although I haven't had a ton of corporate experience, I've had a lot of experience on teams coordinating creative work. And so I know what it takes to build kind of a group of people to come together to make something really beautiful. And so that's really what I try to do in the work that I, produce now, although very different industry.
Mhm. And you mentioned perfection before. Do you think there is the perfect ad creative?
Um, I don't think that there's something that is perfect in the sense that, ultimately you are not, like art is subjective, right? People either like it or they don't. It's by the people. Guess what? Ads are the exact same thing, right? Um, but there are a lot of technical things that should be right. Like we shouldn't have typos, right? Like that just shouldn't happen, right? So there's like,
Engagement bait?
yeah, yeah. But if you're intentional about it, that's fine. But if you weren't intentional and just lazy, that's a problem, right? And so I think there's like a difference, right? If you're intentional, like if you know the rules, you should always know when to break those rules, right? Like that's totally fine. Um, but I think that like when I think about us as a studio, I want to be putting out the best quality work. That doesn't mean the prettiest work. It just means that like how we approach our client service is at the highest level. How we communicate with people, how we work as a team together is at the highest quality. Every detail matters to me. So if we are making mistakes, that is not okay. We do not tolerate mistakes. We should not tolerate mistakes, right? Because if we tolerate a small mistake, what does that mean about big mistakes, right? And so although the ad itself, I don't think can be perfect. I don't think there's such a thing as perfection because it's ultimately the market decides what it wants and what it doesn't want. Our approach can be perfect. And that's what we should be striving for, right? Is giving ourselves the best shot for performance. And most of the time, like there's really good ideas that die because execution was not perfected. And that's a problem because we should be perfecting the execution so that it gives us the opportunity to see if we can make the best performing ad possible. And so that's what I want my team to do. And if we're not doing that, that's where conversations have to be had. And it's a high standard, but it's the only way that we're going to be able to produce great work. And so again, it's the standard that we hold ourselves to. So if a client isn't happy, I'm not happy. I'm not happy until they're happy. And I'm not happy until we're executing at the highest level. And it's really important for us to make sure that we're maintaining that as best as possible.
And what about if the client is not happy, but you are like super confident that the ad will crush it, that it will work, and based on the data that you have, it's something that you want to test?
If there's ever a creative strategy or creative direction mismatch, usually I'm trying to ask questions as to why. Like, why do they believe that? Can they point me to some data? Um, where is the pushback? Is it just because? Like, is there a reason behind it? Um, and then try to find what is the middle ground there. Sometimes it is about, hey, this is what we believe. Like, we'll do your idea and you'll do our idea, and let's test both, right? Because ultimately, like, I am not a predictor of success, right? Like, I am not going to say that I am a predictor of success, but you are coming to us with trust and with the insight that you wanted our perspective of how to approach this problem. This is our approach, right? And if you trust us, like, let's do it, right? If there was some sort of data like, hey, we've already tried this idea, this doesn't work, cool, back off, I'm good, right? I don't need to keep pushing forward on it. But if there's just an opinion, then I try to understand why that opinion exists and then how can we find some middle ground. It does happen, of course, but I think that, like, asking more questions before making statements is always a good way of approaching many things in life, personal or business. And so I think that it's really about that. Most of the time when there's a disagreement, it's just a mismatch of expectations. But I think both parties would want to have the same outcome, which is more growth, more profit, more money, right? Um, so if we know the goal is the same, then let's sit on the same side of the table, look at the problem and say, how are we going to together solve this problem through creative, right? Here's our way of doing it. What's your way? Is there a way we can do both? Mix it together, and understand that. But those are the conversations that I want to have before just being like, you're wrong, I'm right. It's like there might be something to be said there. So asking questions always helps.
Yeah, yeah. And you said the content that you guys produce is not necessarily pretty. How do you see the split or the difference between like ugly ads, lo-fi content compared to like high production, beautiful branded content?
Yeah, yeah. So what makes us different than most providers out in our space is the fact that we shoot in person. So we do shoot with a cinema camera and, actors, and we do a lot. So, but we're also doing creator content, we're doing edits, we're doing statics. So we give you that visual diversity for any brand that works with us, which I think is really great. But also it's about the idea, right? So less so about the what it was shot on and more so about the idea execution. If I'm only doing creator content, I can only brief out ideas that a creator could do. But if I can shoot on a camera and I can get 5 people to taste test your product, that is a concept that and an idea that could not be done by somebody who's just doing creator content, right? So the reason why we have the production and the capabilities is to give us the opportunity to come up with the best ideas for the brands. Um, Ultimately, every brand is going to be different, right? So some brands, I think, will skew more on the prettier hi-fi side, and others will be the opposite. I don't care about a tool or how it's shot or whatever. I care about finding performance. And I care about having the tools to find that performance for you. Right. And so the way I'm setting up production is giving us the best shot at finding and putting out as many different ideas and execution of those ideas to find what's going to work for you. Because there's nothing worse than only doing hi-fi, and the thing is you really need lo-fi, and I can't provide that, but what, I'm gonna keep paying me for what? Or vice versa, right? So I am tool agnostic. I just care about finding you winning ads because that's ultimately what you're paying me for, and paying our team for is finding winning ads. And so the more openness I think you can have to it, the better. And I think that again, each brand is going to be very different. I don't think that there's one right tool. I just think that you got to find what works, and that's going to be different for every brand. And I would say when brands get bigger, you also have to take into consider things like visual brand and all of those things as well. And that is valuable, but it also creates some different dynamics when it comes to creating content as well. And so I think that we try to be thoughtful of all those things, but yeah, tool agnostic. So some accounts are going to be really heavy on the AI stuff, and some are going to not touch it at all because it doesn't work or they don't want to do it, right? And that's fine. Our goal is to help them find performance, and that looks very different across many different brands and different industries that we're in, which I think also keeps it very fun and engaging in terms of us, in terms of problem solving, right? Because we don't run off of one playbook. We are able to come up with a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And you said something that I think every operator needs to hear, and which is your P&L reveals your true priorities. Walk me through what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think that everybody is like, oh, creative is king. Right? We always talk about, oh, what's going to drive the most performance in your ad account? Creative, creative, creative. Okay, why do you spend like no money on creative? Right? You want to grow, but you're really afraid of spending money on creative. Those two things are just not going to work out, right? And so everybody like looks at these big brands that like have grown a lot, and they're like, oh look at Groons is the Groons is like the latest one, right? But there's always something before and whatever, and there's going to be other ones, right, that pop up. What do they have all in common? They weren't afraid to spend on creative. Now, is that Facebook creative? No, it could be influencer, it could be creators, seeding, etc. Blah blah blah. The only unit that you need to grow is creative, right? You can pick your channel, you can pick your flavor, whatever. But the base thing that you always need is creative. So you should be spending money on getting creative, right? So oftentimes they have, let's say they're spending $100,000 on Meta. You're spending $100,000 on Meta. It's not profitable right now, or maybe let's say you're struggling with profitability and CAC is rising with $100,000. Currently, you're spending whatever $5,000 on ads on new content, but it's not working. Okay, right now you're okay with keeping pushing that 100K unprofitable bad CAC when why don't you just drop it down to 80, spend $20,000 on brand new creative from a bunch of different other people who could then maybe help you get that CAC down so you're now spending it more efficiently at 80 than you are at 100. And now you also, because you have all that new content, you could probably go from 80 to 150 to 100 as opposed to what you were doing at 100, right? Like you got to be okay with going less on ad spend and more on creative because that's how you're going to find efficiency. That's how you're going to find new winners. That's how you're going to find and drop your CAC, or at least give yourself a chance to do that, right? Outside of course, offers and other things, right? But like if creative is a needle mover, like that should be one of the first things you're willing to spend money on. And oftentimes, even today, it's not. And I don't understand that, right? You can't be like, I want to be like Groons, but then also be like, I'm only going to spend like a 1%, if that, on creative. It's like, you can't say, oh, why am I not growing fast enough? Or why am I not growing enough? Or I'm struggling to grow right now. literally all you have to do is look at your P&L and say, how much am I spending on creative? Because most likely it's the same. And if you are spending a lot on creative and not growing, then like you have like a true like creative problem. Like you need to like get better creative or something. But like very rarely is that the case. Very rarely are people overspending on creative. I've never met somebody who's overspending on creative.
Yeah,
I've met too many people underspending on creative. So that's like the biggest thing for me.
yeah. And I'm totally with you on this one. And we had both things. We had basically exactly that thing play out recently with two different brands that we are working with. And one brand is exactly what you pointed out in the first example. So they're spending like 150K a month or so on ads and are not willing to spend more money on the creatives. They're not willing to spend more than 5 to 10K maximum on like creative. And even that, like if it's not necessary, if they can go like pass by without that, they would prefer to do that. And performance has been declining over the past few months, and it's not where they want the performance to be.
And you could
And
probably
then
get there like through like a month or 2 months, right? But it's when things start to plateau, they start to raise questions about, well, why are we struggling? Well, you just wasted 2 months not testing new stuff. Right? So, like, you might have been able to get it, keep it going. You got a few new ads going. It's fine. But it's when stuff really hits the fan. It's like it's never because you didn't put new content in a week ago. It's because you haven't been investing in new content for the last few months, right? It's the same thing. Why is my Q4 not so great? Well, you decided to start creating content in Q4, whereas the brands that win in Q4 are the ones that spent the whole year maybe spending more on creative, maybe underperforming a bit because they are willing to take on a little bit more of that pressure, knowing that when they find all of those evergreen ads, that in Q4, they're going to blast off and it's going to all work out, right? They're willing to take that risk a bit more because they're investing in it, because they know and they're putting their money where their mouth is, right? So it's one thing to say creative is important, but then they don't do it. And then it's you're not gonna see the effects right away, right? Like, if you don't put ads in the account next week or 2 weeks, you're gonna probably be fine. But a few months from now, when you've only put in a few new things and the ones you already have aren't really working or whatever, it's like, yeah, that's why you're not growing, you know? And I think that is where people always look at it too late. And if you just looked at your P&L and L and looked at your investment of your P&L in terms of creative, I could probably predict that you're going to kind of crash in your ad account based on just how much money you're spending. Um, so as you spend more, you've got to spend more. You have to be okay with that. But like also by spending more on creative, you're giving yourself more inventory to get more ad spend efficiently. Like ad spend it's like a math problem, right? Like if you know you're acquiring customers at $100, you're going to take that bet every single time. But when it goes to 110, 120, you're going to be like, I'm not sure, right? But if you can double your ad spend at that same 100, you're going to do that all the time because you know that the math is always working, right? Barring any inventory issues. But like to get that growth in that spend is not because you spent more. It's because you have more creative to go into the account that can then allow it to have that more spend. And I think people are just not thinking about that. And creative production and creative ads, it's not finite. It's a growing thing. It needs to grow with your account, or else you're just gonna start to like grow and crash, grow and crash, grow and crash. And you've got to be able to anticipate your content needs based on your spend. If you spend double the amount, you need more content. Maybe not double the amount of content, but you need more content. So are you able to do that? Yes or no? If not, you got to go hire out creative creators or agencies or studios to get you that stuff, right? And so I just think that people aren't anticipating their creative needs until it's too late, and that really hurts them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like the opposite example of that brand that I just mentioned is another one that was spending less on ads at that time. They were like getting close to 100K per month in ad spend on Meta, and they decided to commit to spending 30K a month just on content production and just on new ads, um, and hired two or three different agencies to help them with a lot of different content, every type that they wanted. And now, like a few months later, they're spending 300,000-400,000 a month and still scaling because they just have so much content, and so much is working. Like CPAs are great, ROAS is great, everything is just crushing it. Compared to the other brand that is not willing to invest into content where things don't look great.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, it's very like I mean, it happens all the time. It's literally the difference, right? Like if we know, like especially in consumer, what drives is gonna be. I mean, barring you wanting to do a very like long growth trajectory of building brand and doing other things, that is definitely a route you're going to, right? If you're listening to this podcast though, you are focused on performance marketing, which is great. Awesome. That is the main driver of growth. Obviously, this is with the understanding that your product is good, right? And like, yes, like you can work on your margins here and there, but like, what is the major factor is going to be ads because even like out. I mean, you can also argue offer as well, like offer and landing pages. It's like you got to drive traffic to those offer and landing pages anyway, right? So like, even though that actually might be the thing that really like gets the sale and really like how you make that offer can really create efficiency with those ads. Those ads at the end of the day are the first impression and they have to make you click, right? So you don't really see the offer in the ads. Most of the time, the offer is on the back half, like in the actual website where you're driving traffic to. So it's like, of all the things you can do as a consumer brand would be creative. Now, do you want to do organic and do like the TikTok shop comfort play? Okay. You're still spending on creative, right? Like you're still spending on it. If you go and do it all on Facebook ads and stuff, that's fine. But like whatever flavor you're deciding, even if you're going to say I'm going to go all organic, okay, you need to spend money on that, right? Like you can't just do that yourself. It doesn't just happen. So it's like whatever channel you decide is the best fit for you and what you want to do, that's fine. There has to be some sort of content engine to make that happen. And it's the most important thing for any consumer brand. So if like you as a consumer brand aren't doing that, like there's just no other way to really like grow unless you're cool with slow growth and doing all this stuff. That's fine. Like if that's what you want. But like if you're somebody who's like, look at Groons. Why am I not them? It's like, because you're not spending nearly as much money on creative as them. And I'm not saying like, because they're $1 billion, they're spending a lot of money. I'm saying like, even at your level, at the same level, right, as you are, whatever it is, they were spending more on creative than you. That's it. That's the driver, right? Like they had the same offer essentially the whole time. So what were they doing? They were just continuing to build larger content engines, more channels, but they knew that they had to spend the money. So that's what they did. And so you just got to be able to do that. It's the biggest driver of growth, but it's the thing that people are most scared to do in terms of like the P&L investment. So it's like, you know, you got to know where the growth is going to come from, and it's going to come from content. Now, is all of the content going to work? No, it's not. Like, it's not going to all work. I get it, but you got to be taking bets. If you're going to take a bet anywhere, it's there because that's where you can get your growth.
If someone asked you, like point blank, what percentage of ad spend should go into creative production, what do you tell them?
10%, and then it goes down to 5, and then down to 1. Right. So it's like a scale. It's a sliding scale depending on how much you're spending per month. Right. But like it's a good rule of thumb. Right. Like, can you get to certain levels of spend, like 100 to 200, spending less than 10K? Like, You could, but most likely that's happening because you as the, like, brand founder or whatever are, like, willing to, like, make the statics and do all this stuff, and, like, maybe you're more inclined to do that, so, like, you can, like, get away with that. But, like, let's say you're just like, "Hey, I need to get content and I need to do this and I've got a lot of other things. I'm more of a product person and like where your strengths are and maybe creative is not the biggest one. It's like 10%, right? Like that is a good fair bet. And like you're building in like think about it. Like if you had to build an internal team, you'd have to hire people, you need to know how to train them and all that stuff. And then you still have to output that content, right? So like you could hire creative strategists but then you gotta, like, still get creators, you gotta get a lot of stuff, so, like, 10% towards true creative production would be extremely valuable, um, and then, yeah, like, once you get to, like, higher levels of spend, it probably tapers off there, but, like, I think that's a good rule of thumb. It also really depends on where you are in terms of your testing budget. So if you're really kind of in a smaller stage and everything is really testing, you might and you don't have a ton of, like, evergreen ads, then, you might need a bit more content to output so that you can, get some wins and start to scale that spend. So, it kinda just depends on what your ad account looks like, but I think that that's a good rule of thumb, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good number. Like obviously there are some brands that are where it's beneficial if they're more aggressive and like if they have the money that they spend 20% or 30% into the production just to like get results faster because then it will allow them to reinvest more into ads once they have found the winners. But yeah, obviously you also
Y
can't just spend everything like all your money on the
Yeah.
content.
For sure, and I think that, like, let's say you are scaling into 100, like, last month you did 85, now you're at 100. You might wanna stick to that 10%, right? Because, you wanna you're kind of growing into it. If you've been, like, kind of like we're at 100, 120 every few like this for the last few months. We really haven't cracked it. I would probably go a little bit higher because most likely you have a creative problem, right? So, like, sometimes those percentages is also dependent on like what your momentum of your ad account spend is. And obviously take into account, of course, seasonality if there is some in your business. But like if you're really getting stuck at a threshold, you probably need to spend a bit more because you've got to get to that next tranche of spend. You're probably on you have a not enough in terms of that ad inventory. Whereas like if you're scaling and scaling and scaling, it's like you probably could go a little under in terms of that percentage rule that I gave you if you're like kind of cooking and like the momentum behind you. So I think it kind of also depends on where things are. Most of the time, though, when people start to plateau, it's because they've underinvested in content.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. And most likely, it's if let's say you're at a big spend, like 200K or something like that, and you're like, well, I'm spending, 20, 30 grand a month. Why is it happening? Well, now you need different. Right? And so you can't just do more of the same. So now you need more and different and new. And so that might require a new investment. So a new creator uh, group, a new creative studio or whatever. Right. And so, you don't want to be like, well, we did 100 ads. Now we're doing 200 of the same type of ad. It's like, that's not going to also give you the growth either. So there's a bit of that, like knowing how is that $30,000 you're spending on creative, is that giving you diversity or just quantity? Because that's also gonna hurt your ad account. And so I think that's something that people are missing and not thinking about as they're thinking about how they are investing in getting more creative.
Yeah, exactly. I've had people on the show who are like very deep believers in creative volume, and especially with AI, like systemizing your way to like hundreds of ads, and even on a weekly basis, like launching hundreds of ads. But I think you're a bit skeptic of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just would love to someone to actually show me that actually work. I haven't really seen that fully work, and I'm not against volume, because you do need more, but I think that you need to be pushing for diversity, which in turn gives you more. Right? So if you're thinking about, like, let's say you have whatever 10 ideas and you're like, we're going to 10x the amount of content we need. Most of the time when people are thinking about 10xing the content, the amount of content, because they talk about quantity is the thing. The incentives are wrong because let's say I'm on your team and you say, "Hey Matthew, your team's producing 20 ads and I need you guys to be producing 60 ads a week." What am I going to do? I'm going to probably find the fastest, easiest way to get 60 because you're telling me I need 60. You didn't tell me you needed 60 different ads. You just said I need you to get maybe 40 more ads per week. Well, I got you 40 more ads. But then you're going to be coming to me and saying after a few weeks, "Hey, you're hitting the volume, but why is the performance not working?" "Oh, well, you didn't ask me to do anything different. I just changed the headline, but it all looks the same, but I got you 60 ads." So, if you're making decisions off of this number without even taking into consideration the quality, and what I mean by quality, I'm talking about the qualitative aspects. So, not like output numbers, files going into Meta, but types of files and what is the theme and what's being said, how is it being said, is it top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, styles and all these other things. If you're not going to take into any of that consideration, no, like more does not make sense. So it's like, I'm not saying don't, but you should be optimizing for doing, "Oh, I want to do all these different styles, talk about all these different themes, talk about to these different personas, and we're going to do it in video and static and hi-fi and lo-fi." That gets you 60 ads, but those are 60 very different ads, right? So I'm setting up my team for diversity, which inherently gives you more ad inventory, right? So if you just break it down, like there's no way that you can say that quantity is the driver of success, right? And then when people say, "Oh, well, this brand or whatever does it on quantity," it's like the reality is like it's not because there was more ads in the account. It was because they did actually happen to have some diversity that was different. The brands that I have seen that do a lot of content with not a ton of change, d they're not spending more. They're not growing. Like, that does not happen. So, diversity has to be the first thing, and if you can figure out diversity, then inherently you'll figure out the quantity, the amount will figure itself out. And the spend will also work its way up too because you have diversity, so now there's something for Meta to grow its spend. Therefore, you need more ads, but you have more money to spend on those ads, right? So focus on different versus more because more will come if you focus on different.
I agree. I think most brands overestimate, yeah, just the quantity of the creators, but not the diversification or diversity of the content that they have. And it's better to have like 10 completely different net new angles, completely different ads compared to 100 very similar variations of
Yeah,
one ad.
because let's say it's not like most brands are spending over $100,000, right? So if let's say in theory, I think most people think that they need more ads than they actually need, right? Because if you're spending $100,000 on ads and 20% of that budget is going towards testing new ads, that's 20K. And let's say your average order is value is 100. So let's say to see you want to do 5x to 10x that, but let's for sake of this, you want to do 5x AOV, that's $500. then that means 20,000 divided by 500 is 40. Okay. 40 ads. I need 40 new ads this month if I'm spending 100K. These are all just general things. It's going to be different per brand, but like, let's just say that those are the 40 ads, right? I don't need hundreds of ads. I need 40 ads, right? And so I think that people don't even do the math on how much ads they really need because they always just think I need more ads. And if you have that mindset, oh, I always just need more ads, you're not actually thinking about the diversity. But if you knew legitimately by forecast, I'm spending $100,000, right? Like you're not going to randomly spend $200,000, right? Like you're most likely by forecast are going to spend $100,000, right? Like you should have a forecast, $100,000. Okay. I know that going into this month of June, I'm going to need 40 ads. Great. Instead of always worrying about doing more, why don't you think about how can those 40 ads be very different than anything you've ever created before, right? And so I just think that people don't even condense or even understand how many ads or few ads that they really need to then like, go and create. And so they are always worried. They're always like all over the place in terms of getting their ad production when in fact they probably don't even need that much. Right. Um, and so if you're spending $50,000 a month, it's going to be even less than that. Right. It's like, you don't need that many new things, but I think people let whatever the world kind of make it feel like they need that all. And it's like you end up spending and optimizing for the wrong thing. You're optimizing for more, I need more. And you're not even thinking about like, what am I even putting out there? I'm putting out 60 trash ads. I would be way better and have way more findings doing 20 great ads that have thoughts behind it, that have a hypothesis. So even if they don't work, I know what doesn't work in my ad account. But if I'm just tossing up 60 ads, just chucking it up and praying, what are you going to gain from that? Like, I don't know. Like, that's not strategy. That's just guessing. Right. And so even if you win, that's just a lottery. But like, how can you recreate that? You won't. So, I think that people really need to think about how many ads they really need, which is probably way less than you think, and then work your creative strategy off of that. And that's going to help you so much further and be way more thoughtful moving forward.
Yeah. Before I let you go, a quick lightning round,
Let's
short
do it.
answers only. What's the best ads that you've seen this year that isn't one of yours?
Ooh. The best ad. um, dang. Let me think about this. Best ad. I'm going to go on to my content inspo real quick. Um, Man, that is a tough one. That's not a
It
lightning round
is.
at all. Um, you know what? Here's what I'll say. Um, you know what? I've seen one. This one brand, let's see. What's it called? Seek Coffee. Seek Coffee, SEEK. I'm a big coffee drinker.
Mm,
And it's like, it was this fast-paced ad and basically saying how like all coffee has mold, but theirs doesn't.
mm,
I saw that and I said, this is gonna work. I don't know how big the brand is. I don't think it's massive, but it's not small either. But the ad cooked and their content is very good. They're very good storytellers. Um, so if you're looking for like a good ad, that one was a good one. There's definitely some more higher production ones that I've been liking recently, but for the sake of our audience, our ecom friends, Seek Coffee is good. I think it's seektolive.com is the URL, but it's
yeah.
this coffee brand. Um, yeah, they're making and like also for coffee, most of the time when you think about coffee brands, because I'm really big, they're always hitting on roasting, quality, a lot of the things. It's very hard to differentiate. But the fact that they were able to find like a healthy angle on differentiating without changing, like it's not like we've got these cool flavors of like, this ready to drink, canned coffee sort of thing. It's coffee beans, but just not moldy. And you're like, okay, I'm all in on that. So I think very cool product placement, like, or product design, while also having great storytelling, phenomenal storytelling.
Yeah, that's definitely not a lightning round. But what's one book besides Claude Hopkins that everyone in the audience should read?
Um, uh, I mean, outside of him and David Ogilvy, how to make your advertising make money is another one of my favorites. It's by how to make
I don't even know
by
that
John
one.
Caples. Um,
Mm,
How to Make Your Advertising Make Money by John Caples. Very underrated book. Um, I can guarantee you've never even heard of it, let alone read it. But it's very good. Also, why it's good is that it can be a reference as well. You can always go back on it and reference it. So really good stuff for like copywriting. I'm a big fan of John Caples. He's kind of one of those kind of like Mad Men era type copywriters. His stuff is very good, but that's a great book.
nice. I'll check it out. Yeah, I've literally never heard of it before, which is weird because I feel like I've read every single book on advertising and copywriting. Not that one.
No, dude, I go. You got to find the old ones. Like they're out of print. Like I go deep on them. So
Mm,
that one's a very, very good one.
nice. And now the last question. What's one thing you believe about advertising that most of your peers or our ecom friends would flat out disagree with?
Mm, Visual brand matters.
Mm,
So that might sound counter because, of course, I've talked about like I don't care what how pretty something is, right? So, but there is something to be said about actually having a brand architecture that you follow. Now, knowing when to break that, I think is the most interesting thing about modern day brands. But actually being embedded with how a consumer thinks and sees your brand and they can spot it. Like you can spot Nike from a mile away. There's something to be said about that. And I think that people have over optimized for performance, that they've under optimized for what does brand mean, and especially visual brand. Um, so that's the hot take. And I think we are going into this new era of brands of understanding how do you how do you have a visual brand while also being able to be in tune with how content is produced, which is very just all over the place. Um, so I don't know have the answer to that, but I do believe that it is important, and I think most people don't agree with me on that.
Matthew, this was genuinely a great conversation. I feel like I learned a lot. Where should people go to follow you and check out Goodo Studios?
Follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, just my name, Matthew Gattozzi, and we've got a newsletter. We put out a podcast. We make content, but yeah, just check me out on Twitter, is where I'm mainly active, and then you can find all the things from there. And if you need content, reach out to me or book a call, and we'd love to chat. But thanks so much for having me. It's always good to talk about content.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you.